Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our next Dexibit webinar. My name is Angie Judge, and I'm here with Victoria Alogna, who's our lead data scientist. Welcome, Victoria.
Hi, Angie. Thanks for having me.
And great to be with everybody today. Today we are going to be talking about predicting the future with AI. We've already done one of our webinars on machine learning not so long ago, but today we're going to be coming and updating you on a couple of topics, some cool new features that we have released in Dexibit for forecasting, and some module updates that we've done around forecasting. We're going to be talking about the time horizons and jobs to be done around forecasting and how this is used out in the real world. We'll be talking about different models that we use for different purposes, so time versus event-based, going through those new features in the product and talking about feature contribution, so the relative importance of different features when it comes to making predictions. So some really exciting things to tune in for. To start us off, for those that are new watching this to Dexibit, at Dexibit we do data analytics specifically for visitor attractions. We work with cultural institutions like museums, zoos, parks, aquariums, performing arts, and also with commercial locations, so things like theme parks and stadiums of all shapes and sizes all around the world, with organizations that have one location and many that have hundreds as well. So I'm going to start by giving you a quick demo of Dexibit if it's your first time seeing the product, and then I'm going to hand over to Victoria to talk about our data science work in more detail. Let's pull that up now. Here we go. So very quickly, this is Dexibit. It's a software as a service platform, and behind the scenes here integrates with a whole pile of your source systems of data. So this can be things like football and ticketing and CRM and point of sale and reviews and social media and what's happening online and our weather feeds, and all sorts of things that tell us about the visitor's experience in your operations and what's happening in the world around it. And this is the end product. Dexibit is developed specifically for data end users or data consumers in mind, but also does a great job of serving data experts such as analysts and scientists. So you don't need to be an expert to use Dexibit. This is a great product to put in the hands of people like visitor services, marketing, operations, security, etc., to help make actionable insights where they're going to do justice to the visitor attraction. In Dexibit, you can have as many dashboards as you like. Creating them is as easy as clicking a button here. And there's a pre-built library hidden in the toolbox on the right-hand side here with a whole pile of visualizations. And this is where the power of Dexibit really comes to play about being specifically for visitor attractions. We know the systems to connect to. We've got the data science models that Victoria will talk us through for visitor experience and visitor attraction specifically. And we've got a pre-built library of visualizations where we know exactly the metrics, exactly the insights, and exactly the visualizations that are going to do a great job to tell the story of data in a visitor attraction. So it's as simple as when I'm creating a dashboard, searching through and clicking to add visualizations to my dashboard, and they appear down at the bottom here. If I'm looking at an individual visualization, I can swivel them to learn a little bit about my data that I'm looking at. Great for data users. I can expand them to download or search out my data, get some key summary statistics, or zoom in. You can see here I'm looking at multiple locations in this case, or maybe I might like just to go for a select one. I can filter down the data that I'm looking at, or look at specific date ranges, or change how I'm styling it up. There's benchmarks in the product. There's lots of great reporting functionality to create automated email reports and to share your dashboards with your team. Item and order level insights to get down very specifically into things like how many t-shirts that are red that I've sold in the store and what the average basket size of those purchases were, for example. lots of cool features around derived metrics and combined metrics. So creating KPIs that are built from multiple systems or multiple attributes coming from a system. And then lots of great stuff around forecasting, which is what Victoria is going to share more with us on today. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Victoria. And Victoria, I'll just pull up some dashboards about forecasting here for you to share with us.
Thanks, Angie. I'll start by talking about the jobs to be done that we think about when we make a forecast or multiple. The first job that we think about is strategic and financial planning. This is usually done about once a year, about 3 to 4 months out from the financial year. Sometimes also the calendar year. Sometimes this is revisited each quarter, but it depends on the customer and their management setup. These questions that they might ask are, how many visitors will we get next year? What is our year-on-year growth? What does the overall trend and timeline of visitation into the future look like? What goals can we commit to based on these forecasts? And how does this translate to our plans of how many visitors or how much revenue we need to hit to make a budget? The second job to be done is event scheduling. So this is done through the year, but often many months ahead of time. It can be for things like I'm scheduling an exhibition, I'm scheduling an event, a marketing campaign, or I need to shut down half the venue for a wedding. So the questions they might ask is, when should I schedule the event for? What happens if I schedule the event on a Tuesday versus on a Saturday? What else is happening at that same time? What visitation might we expect on that day? What other days around it might be better, for instance? Or what other events around it might be better placed? And the third job to be done is labor hiring. So this is usually done about once or twice a year. For instance, once the budget has been established and the teams can then be expanded, or at the beginning of a high season, maybe about 90 days out. So the questions that you might ask when you're doing this job are, how busy will we be this summer? What does that look like over the week's days? What happens if we're open 3 days versus 4 days? What days in particular are going to be the really big days? And how big does our workforce need to be? The fourth job is rostering and resourcing. So this is done about once a week or a fortnight or a month for a few weeks ahead. And the questions they might ask are, what is our projection for the next few weeks? Why? Are we on track to hit our goals? And how many staff do we need? What about resources like stock? And then another job that is done frequently amongst all of these jobs is just a retrospective. This is done about once a month for the month prior, and you might ask questions such as, how accurate were our forecasts? How much do we trust them? How can we improve them? Where did we fail? What did we learn? So those are the jobs to be done and how we think about forecasts when we make them. Any questions on that? Cool.
Just for anybody on the call as well, you can add your questions into the Q&A or into the chat.
Cool. The other thing that we think about when we make our forecasts is what kind of features we should use. So in most cases, actually, I should back up a little bit. All of our forecasts are time series forecasts. We're predicting a target through a sequence in time. And in all of our forecasts, we use time features such that we decompose a date into features such as year, day of the week, or weekly seasonality. In most cases, we also use event-like features, which include our unified industry data, your operations, such as your opening hours, the events happening in or around your location, and things such as weather. Depending on how far into the future you're forecasting, you may not benefit from using event features. Specifically, when we make predictions, we make them using a set of assumptions about what the future will look like, and we predict the future based on those assumptions. So if your almanac isn't up to date, so that you have no events in the future, but we've trained on event data, our event and time-based forecast won't be as accurate. It will predict as if you have no events, even though you probably will have events and just haven't scheduled them yet. In other words, if the event data used for training the model doesn't accurately reflect future events, the predictions may be less accurate, assuming a lack of events when there could be events scheduled but not yet entered in. So in those cases, and there are many other cases, a time-based forecast is much more useful. And in those cases, we use a time-based forecast. Cool. Any questions on that? Hope that was clear. All right. I'm going to go into feature contributions, which is most sort of interesting when you think about events. Essentially, this feature contribution dashboard shows insights into how different features influence daily revenue forecast predictions in this case. Essentially, these features are responsible for either increasing or decreasing predictions compared to a baseline visitation level in your data. So there's just a glossary of terms there, just so we're all on the same page before we dig in. We're going to look at two metrics. The first is absolute proportional impact, which represents the proportional impact of a feature in absolute terms relative to other features. So essentially, how much out of a scale of 0 to 1 does this feature impact the prediction? And the greater the value, the greater the impact on the prediction. Direction illustrates the effect a feature has on the model's prediction. So a negative direction means the feature decreases the prediction compared to the baseline, which in most cases is just your average. In this case, it would be the average revenue for the time period being trained on. While a positive direction indicates an increase in the prediction. I hope that's clear. Let me know if there's any questions. Great. So here in our beautiful app, you can see our overall average absolute proportional impact of our features for revenue. And this is across an entire year of data that you can see this. So across an entire year, these were the features that had the biggest impact on average on our predictions. And you can see here, day of the year is having a huge impact. Public holidays is having about a 0.19 impact. In the next visualization, you can see the overall direction of these features. So you can see the day of the week appears to both increase and decrease, depending on the value of day of the week, the predictions. Cool. Let's go. And now we're going to just look at the month of December. Here we can see that for the month of December, public holidays is a lot more important than it was. So where is public holidays? Yeah, it's gone up a significant amount from 0.19 to 0.27. Well, that's because Christmas is happening in December, and our model has learned a little bit that Christmas is important and these public holidays matter. Cool. Here we can see the direction of these things. You can see that public holidays is having a positive impact on our predictions. So in this scenario, revenue is going to go up based on there being a public holiday. We're going to predict more revenue. Nice. And here you can see that on a daily, in the next visualization, you can see that on a daily basis. You can see how much on a given day each feature's impact on a prediction. You can see that on different days, different features have more or less impact on the prediction. And that can be positive or negative depending on their value. This is really helpful for us as well. And this helps you know, when am I wrong? What happened on the day that I was wrong? What am I missing in my feature set? How can I explain this, the variance in this target, whether that be revenue or visitation or something else? Nice. Can we just go down to the next visualization. Thank you, Angie. And here you can see, we can just look at our negative feature contribution. So what features have the most negative contribution to our revenue? And you can see that we used our DXQL to just select negative impact features. Great. And you can see just our negative feature impacts on a given day or our positive feature impacts on a given day. This is really useful, especially if you want to understand why was my visitation less than I expected it to be, or why was my prediction less than I expected it to be. Nice. All right. Well, that's all for me. Is there anything else that we should
I've got
cover?
one question here for you, Victoria. So the question is, we've got our time features, we've got our internal events. What else can we do to increase our accuracy?
That's a great question. I think the most important thing is you want to model the world around you, and venues, our venues don't exist as islands. They exist in an ecosystem of other venues and other events. So it would be incredibly useful to have that extra context when you make predictions. For instance, what is my neighboring or competitive visitor attraction doing on this day? Or what's the weather on this day? So having context, or is there a protest happening on this day? We just had a protest recently in Auckland, and the whole city changed its movements around it. So it's good to know what else is happening in the world around me when I make predictions.
So a couple of options on how we can solve for this event third-party data. This is really difficult data we're finding for individual locations to collect, because you have to go out there and trawl websites and things to get a hold of it. So a couple of options of how we can bring this data forward. We have just released some new almanac functionality, which we will share with you a little later on, to bring the almanac experience into the dashboard. But with that, we can bring a third-party add-on if you would like to bring in a third-party event feed of all regional events happening in your area. So this can be things like conferences, symposiums, concerts, sports events, protests, as Victoria mentioned, and so forth. So it's really detailed data to help supplement those forecasts. We do find it has quite a dramatic impact on forecast accuracy, but it's also really good data to use for your own purposes for things like event planning, exhibition scheduling, staff briefings for frontline staff to understand what's on in the city around you on a given week or day as it comes up. So that's a add-on option that we can bring in to supplement forecast accuracy as well. Wonderful. Any more questions coming through? Nothing there today. Victoria, anything else that we should cover?
One thing we didn't show was that you can group all of this by time period, which is also really helpful. If you want to look across an entire year, you can group by the quarter, you can group by the month, you can group by the week. So it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, that's such a great point, is being able to really get in here, index a bit, and look at the different ways in which you can bring this data through. So out of interest, when you're looking in the library, you'll be going for forecasts to grab a hold of your actual forecasts. And then you can see there are some visualizations in here for feature explanations, and that's the ones that we've been looking at here today. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Victoria, for sharing that with us today. It was really great to learn a little bit more behind the scenes of how machine learning models work and how you can grab a hold of that value through Dexibit and see the insights, because that output that machine learning models produce is really useful, actionable information to be able to help guide decisions and get a guide on what's happening out in the world and how the venue and the visitation is responding to that. So thank you very much for taking us through that.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Angie.
And thanks everyone for joining us today. We'll see you again next time on the first Thursday of the month in January. And in the meantime, a happy holidays to everyone.